Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the Rock Island Auction Company, taking a look at some of the guns they're going to be selling in their upcoming December of 2017 premiere auction. And we get to look at a really cool one today. We've seen some guns of this system before, but never one quite like this, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to look at, well, almost every version of this that I can find. This is a Lorenzoni pattern of gun. Now, the Lorenzoni was a system developed in Italy in the mid-1600s for a repeating flintlock, where the action actually contains a magazine for projectiles and a magazine for powder. And there is a rather large lever on this side of the gun that allows you to cycle the system and reload it probably about 7 times before you're actually out of powder and ball. So, a really interesting high volume of fire capability for the mid-1600s. Now, this particular one was made by a gunsmith by the name of Wilson in the United Kingdom. And Wilson, and the company later Wilson and Son, was actually one of the largest London gunmakers that existed between the period of roughly 1730 and, well, 1832. Now, this was a family business started by Richard Wilson, who in 1730 became a master gunsmith in England, and he would go on to have a son, William, who also became a master gunsmith, and William had a son, William Jr., who also became a master gunsmith. The company ended up being, like I said, one of the largest in London, and they didn't really do super high-end guns. They focused on kind of middle of the road, good quality, not junk, but not super exclusive. Middle of the road guns, and a lot of guns for export. They were probably the single biggest manufacturer of firearms for the North American market until 1787. They made a lot of guns both for sale to the colonists and also for the Indian trade. And among all of these other things, they also dabbled in some of the more exotic styles of firearm, like this Lorenzoni pattern. Not only did they make Lorenzoni pattern guns, they also made Ferguson pattern guns. The Ferguson was an early breech-loading rifle actually used during the American Revolutionary War. And, well, the Lorenzoni is just a super cool system. So let's take a look up close, and I'll show you exactly how that works. Wilson didn't date his guns, but he was kind enough to put his name on them, as you can see here. By the way, this would be William Wilson the Elder, the middle member in this family business, and for the record, he was actually elected master of the British Gunmakers Company 4 separate times. So no mean feat. This guy was a respected name and a very talented artisan. There's some really pretty nice scroll work on the various elements of this rifle, even going out onto the barrel, and I think that patterning on the barrel is really cool in and of itself. The barrel is octagonal out to this point, where it turns round, and it stays round for the rest of its length. This is a really long barrel, probably 36 inches or more. It is smoothbore, not rifled, and has a simple bead sight. In fact, there is the bead sight. As with most Lorenzoni pattern guns, the barrel can be threaded off, so I'm going to go ahead and take that off now, just because that makes this thing a lot more convenient for me to move around and show you on camera. So the way this actually works is that this central spindle has 2 open chambers in it. It has a chamber for a ball and it has a chamber for powder. And rotating the lever through a 180-degree throw will bring those 2 chambers back to here, where they will line up with the magazine, the ball magazine, and the powder magazine. You will then, as long as you tilt the rifle down, maybe shake it a little bit, you will get powder and ball in the center spindle. You'll then rotate the lever back to the closed position here, which will dump the ball into the barrel and the powder right behind it. At the same time, there is this lug on the outside, the right side of the center spindle, which is going to do several other operations. You can see it comes around here. It's going to catch on the frizzen, and it's going to close the frizzen, and then it's also going to catch on this. Down in here, there's this little arm extending forward from the cock, and it's going to recock the action and close the frizzen at the same time that it's loading the barrel. that is also priming the pan here. We have a second magazine of powder right here on the side of the gun. So if I lift that up, I would fill that magazine with powder as well. And you can see when I rotate this, that priming pan is going to come down into here and fill up with powder on its own. Now looking down the front of the gun, since we have the barrel removed, you can see the two chambers in that center spindle. This one is for powder, and we know that because it's got that central fin in it, which makes sure that a ball doesn't fall into that chamber. And then if I rotate the lever open, there's the chamber for a ball. And as these rotate all the way back, when they get to about here, well, when they get to there, that's fully open. And at that point, these two chambers are both lined up with their respective magazines. Close that. Shake the gun downwards a little bit. You cannot use this with shot. Despite the fact that it is a smoothbore barrel, the end of the barrel has a forcing cone of sorts in it so that the ball won't simply roll down the barrel and fall out. The diameter gets just slightly tighter, enough to get a nice gas seal when it fires. However, if you tried to use this with shot, all the shot would, in fact, just fall down out the end of the barrel because there's no wad on top like there would be with a typical muzzle-loading shotgun. So this is a 20-bore, I want to say rifle. It's not a rifle. It's a 20-bore musket. So that's the size of the projectile, and that's what we saw with the magazine there. These systems were obviously still in demand, at least somewhat, in as late as the 1770s or maybe 1780s, as we can see from the fact that Wilson was making them at that point. This still would have been a remarkable amount of firepower for the time. However, there are ongoing concerns about the safety of this style, this Lorenzoni pattern of action, because all it takes is a little bit of powder to work its way back in this joint between the central spindle and the frame of the gun. And if you get a little bit of powder that allows the fire in the chamber to transmit back into the powder magazine, then the whole action is going to blow up in your hands, and it's going to be really unfortunate for the shooter. So that led to two things. One was only really good gunsmiths manufactured these, and the second was a lot of people decided not to buy them, or if they did, perhaps not to shoot them very much, just to be on the safe side. While the Lorenzoni system was invented in the 1600s, this rifle, or musket, I suppose, actually dates to most likely approximately the 1770s. That's about the time period when Wilson was making these. It's interesting to note, that you can't be a particularly bad gunsmith and make a functioning Lorenzoni system gun. You have to be able to get the machining right, to get the tolerances in this rotating action for it to be effective and reliable and safe. And Wilson was clearly able to do that. In fact, it's interesting to note that while he may not have been one of the really top-tier exclusive gun makers, his name was good enough that they were copying it in Liège to make guns for trade elsewhere. So if you would like to own this yourself, a legitimate, real Wilson gun, not one of those Liège knockoffs, well, take a look at the description text below. You'll find a link there to Rock Island's catalog page for this guy. You can see their description and price estimate and pictures and all that sort of information. And if you're interested, you can place a bid or right through their website. Thanks for watching.